I don't feel that we need to apologise. I think that there are lessons that have been learned. I think that everybody can learn from this, and hopefully now the chapter can. We've taken our pounding in public. We've taken a very public pounding.
So one of the hottest topics in 2022 was the Red Bull penalty, and rest assured that the Austrian team isn't happy with the outcome. Although they've complied and pleaded guilty to the FIA, they're concerned that the penalty will be too severe for the minor breach of the budget cap. Horner has spoken about the performance loss in 2023, and it seems like the Austrian team will be severely hurt by the outcome of the verdict of the governing body. 2021 was the most competitive seasons that we've seen in modern-day Formula 1, and Verstappen won the championship in a controversial yet regular manner. While there were some feuds over whether the race result should have been reinstated prior to the safety car deployment, that hasn't been done, and Red Bull has clinched the first Drivers' Championship ever since 2013. It's not the way that they would have wanted to win it, that's for sure, with Verstappen crashing into Hungary and Silverstone thanks to Bottas and Hamilton respectively, and the battle being very fierce from Brazil onwards. With this on their heads, they now have to deal with the fact that they've cheated and spent $2 million more than the allowed $145 million, which is something that has proven to be a very sensitive matter in the paddock. The FIA was under huge pressure to bring the right penalty and justification to Red Bull, and while the Austrian team feels like they're being killed by this verdict, their competition feels like the penalty itself was a slap on the wrist. Nevertheless, the situation stands as it is, and Red Bull will have to pay $7 million in fines, and will see a 10% deduction of the time spent in CFD and wind tunnel facilities for the 2023 season. The second penalty, which is considered the sporting one, has turned out to be the more draconian one, according to Horner, with the Brit being really harsh to the governing body for this outcome. When talking about how the penalty will hurt his team in the future, not just in 2023, but also in 2024 and onwards, Horner added, $7 million is an enormous amount of money, and the more draconian part is the sporting penalty, which is a 10% reduction in our ability to use our wind tunnel and aerodynamic tools. I've heard people reporting that it's an insignificant amount. Let me tell you, that's an enormous amount. That represents anywhere between 0.25 seconds and 0.5 seconds of lap time. By winning the Constructors' Championship, obviously we become victims of our own success by having a 5% incremental handicap compared to the second and third places. We will have 15% less wind tunnel time than the second place team in the Constructors' Championship and 20% less than the third team, a draconian amount. That 10% will have impact on our ability to perform on track next year. In 2023, the sport will see some changes in how the cars are going to be run, such as increased ride height and an increased diffuser throat. Red Bull was able to dominate the sport with the regulations as they stand now in 2022, but when the ride height is going to be raised, the playing field is going to be leveled and the competition will be brought closer. One of the top solutions for the porpoising issues is increased ride height, but if the teams did this in 2022, they were going to lose a massive amount of performance. The governing body has reacted and changed some of the regulations for the 2023 season, largely due to Mercedes' lobbying of the FIA about the dangers of porpoising. The increased ride height of 15mm, as well as the increased diffuser throat, are going to bring a lot of cars closer now, due to the fact that the porpoising is going to be practically gone. And now that all cars are obliged to do this, the performance loss will probably be seen in every competitor as well. Horner was very angry about these regulations, which, apart from the penalty that his team has received from the FIA, are going to hurt the 2023 campaign for Red Bull. He believes that the 2023 rules were brought in only because one team struggled with them, and had this team been any other apart from Mercedes, then the outcome and the solution would be much different from what we're going to see now. Horner also spoke about the 2023 season, and when asked whether his team can fight again for the championship, his views weren't as optimistic as one would think. It's a hit, it's a handicap, it gives an advantage to our competitors, which is why they were pushing so hard for a draconian penalty, and we're going to have to work incredibly hard in the time we have available. We're going to have to be efficient with our time, with the runs that we do in our wind tunnel. I have full belief in the capability of our team. I think they've demonstrated that time and time again, There were other sporting penalties that were available for the FIA, but this one was lobbied for by our competitors because they felt it hit us the hardest. Clearly, Horner has accused his competitors of bullying Red Bull to the point where he has repeatedly stated that it has zero benefit over their performance in 2022. However, Zak Brown and Wolff didn't feel this way, adding that Red Bull were guilty for what they were accused of and they were going to withstand the consequences of their actions, adding that the consequences weren't big enough according to them. Now, before we move on, we wanted to tell you about the amazing deal the official F1 store is doing right now. Holiday season is here and they're doing daily discounts on all orders, so check out the first link down in the description to get yourself this juicy discount. In addition to the 10% penalty that Horner has labelled draconian, Red Bull will see an additional reduction in time spent in these facilities as a result of winning the Constructors' Championship after finishing P2 last season. That's why many people thought that Mercedes was doing some tactics for the 2023 championship when it comes to the Constructors' Championship, because with them finishing P3, it would mean that they will spend more time in the CFD and the wind tunnels. This is something that the Silver Arrows desperately need in order to bring themselves back to the top, given the fact that they have a reliable engine and struggle a lot with the aerodynamical phenomenon of porpoising throughout the 2022 season. So what is Red Bull going to experience in the following season? Instead of the 70% prior to the penalty, they'll have 63% of wind tunnel time, and this works out to 201.6 wind tunnel runs and 1,260 CFD items per ATP. As the sporting regulations define that these values will be rounded up to the nearest integer, the wind tunnel run should be rounded up to 202. Eventually, this means that Red Bull will see a reduction of 2022 wind tunnel runs and 140 CFD items per ATP. So effectively, Red Bull has lost the value of 1.4 championship positions, and in doing so sacrificed an amount of wind tunnel and CFD work compared to its nearest rivals that will have an impact. Compared to Red Bull, the second team will have 38 more wind tunnel runs and 240 more CFD in its allowance per ATP next year, which in real terms is almost 20% more than the work Red Bull conducts. It's obvious that the penalty is not just any penalty to the Austrian team, and with the new regulations, they're going to be severely hurt for a penalty that, according to Horner, had zero benefit to their performance, something we've mentioned earlier in this video. When talking about this matter, Horner added, "I stand by the statement that there was zero benefit because the amount that we went over, we believe there are mitigating factors. If we went over because we paid sick pay, if we went over because we paid people we felt weren't in the cap in terms of costs with catering, not one penny was spent on the performance of the car. I'm astounded that there were no other teams that found themselves in that position, but good for them that 8 of them fully complied." Obviously, the rivals of Red Bull are angry with how the situation unfolded for the Austrian team, and according to Zak Brown, the consequences have nothing to do with the season that they've committed a breach to. The situation went to the extent of Wolff publicly threatening to breach the budget cap for the 2023 season if the repercussions that are brought upon Red Bull have no implications on the championship winning season. It's going to be a very interesting period ahead for the Austrian team, and we're yet to see how things will unfold for the 2023 season. With Verstappen and Perez's relationship now jeopardized, we're likely to see some changes with the team that won their first Constructors' Championship since 2013. So, what do you think of Red Bull's draconian penalty? Let us know in the comments down below.